Welcome, and thank you so much. This event would not be possible without all of you who've made the time to be here today. We also have a large number of people on our web link who are joining us virtually. That world has not ended. It's definitely continued to enable so many more people to enjoy a memorable day like today. So we are here today to celebrate the Consumer Goods and Services Ombud, the work that they've done through their annual report for 2023 and 2024. And we celebrate that because, as you will hear later on in the day, we are running an incredible operation that's looking after the rights of every single consumer in the country. The motto this year is "Leave no one behind." And I find that incredible because we definitely never forget who we are, where we come from, and to take care of those that are still living all across South Africa. And I hope all of you are enjoying the Olympics and watching South Africans. Are they not doing fantastic? They are doing an incredible, incredible job. I looked at Regale Joseph. I don't know if you saw her. She just won the 400-meter hurdle. And you're playing her. She's running. They're playing her. She's running. She's doing a fantastic job. And the next cutaway is straight to her township in Worcester. And the whole community is running to Regale's family to celebrate with her mother and her father. And it touched my heart. And I really wanted to just remember that we are here not only to serve our own interests, but we're serving the interests of the mothers, the fathers, the grandparents, the aunts and the sisters, everybody. That's going to be the focus today, really, is to celebrate the bigger picture that the Ombud is doing. So it's going to be an incredible program. We will be looking at very interesting panel speakers, and we do start off with the CEO, Ms. Queen Munyai, the Chief Executive Officer for the Consumer Goods and Services Ombud. So we have a huge audience following us, and thanks to Business Day for being part of it and hosting us. So we have a number of platforms that we are showing up on, and I'm hoping that you'll be joining and sending the link around. The more people can know the work of the Ombud, the better. So there's the Business Day Facebook page. Go on there and you can watch and share the link. There's also Business Day YouTube Live, and we are live right now, so behave. Okay? We are also at Arena Events on their LinkedIn page. If you're going to hashtag and send information about the event, please hashtag us on BD CGSO 2024. And there's also hashtag Leave No One Behind. I love it. And the final one is hashtag Annual Report. So let's get the show started. And I think it's critical that I must make sure that I leave nothing unsaid. I think I do want to welcome as well one of our guests who's joined us today, the Acting Commissioner for the National Consumer Commission, the big boss, Harding Ratsishushu. Thank you so much for making the time to see us. Our panel, by the way, just to tantalize your taste buds later on, I will be again asking the CEO to sit down with us after she's unpacked the annual report. And we'll be inviting Lee Subrathi, the Ombudsman, to give us a breakdown of what it is that we are governing for when it comes to consumer goods and the services work. And then we also have the board chair, Michael Lawrence, joining us to give us a bigger strategic picture of this industry globally, and then bringing it back home as to what is the call that we are asked to respond to. So inviting now, please just give her a round of applause, the CEO of the Ombuds.
$8.1 billion people on the planet. But what do each of them have in common? They're all consumers. They all need efficient, effective dispute resolution.
Tasked with enforcing the Consumer Goods and Services Industry Code of Conduct, as mandated by the Consumer Protection Act, CGSO is dedicated to handling complaints, mediating disputes, and facilitating settlements between consumers and suppliers.
Welcome to the Consumer Goods and Services Ombud. We are an impartial, independent dispute resolution body set up in 2013 in terms of Section 82, subsection 6 of the Consumer Protection Act. We educate consumers about their rights and redress should any of the suppliers or any industry player breach the Consumer Protection Act or the CPA.
Guided by an executive team and a board of members, CGSO operates under the oversight of regulatory body such as the National Consumer Commission, in accordance with the Consumer Protection Act. Our leadership ensures transparency and proactive consumer support, upholding a foundation of fairness, impartiality, respect, and accessibility.
Meet our team of professionals behind the CGSO. It is through their expertise that we every day change the challenges into victories of fairness.
Well done, guys. Awesome, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Sure. You guys have correct these numbers.
At CGSO, we're not just about resolving disputes. We're committed to raising standards of good conduct, ensuring compliance, and educating both consumers and suppliers. Our goal is to create a fair and transparent marketplace where every transaction is conducted with integrity and respect.
Accessibility is key at the Consumer Goods and Services Ombud. You can access our services through our website www.cgso.org.za. Catch us on Complaints mobile app, or we are also available on social media platform as Consumer Goods and Services Ombud. Or you can walk into our offices and complete a manual form. Every consumer has a voice.
Empowering consumers, ensuring fairness. The Consumer Goods and Services Ombud, your partner in fair trade practices. Have a complaint? We're here to help.
Praise the Lord. Wonderful. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the launch of our, I think it's the 10th launch of our annual report since inception, and it covers the period between March 2023 and 29 February 2024. That is our financial year. So thank you for making time, and thank you to our online viewers. So you've heard how wonderful the CGSO has done, or what we do, the important work that we do in the industry as a dispute resolution body, which is an alternative to the National Consumer Commission. So we are mandated to mediate those disputes and ensure that industry players abide by the Consumer Goods and Services Industry Code of Conduct. We also educate consumers about their rights and redress should any of the industry players breach the CPA or the code. We offer guidance to participants and guide them on how to implement the Consumer Protection Act. We are set up as a non-profit organization, and we are funded entirely by the industry. Participation is not voluntary. Under the code of conduct in which we operate, all eligible companies and entities are compelled to subscribe and register to the CGSO scheme, declaring their annual turnover and paying the annual participation fees. The participation fees are based on the percentage of annual turnover. SMMEs whose turnover are less than 1 million per annum, they are required to sign up, but they do not have to pay any fee. Our services are free to consumers, although some terms and conditions do apply. For example, we deal with complaints that are already, we do not deal with any complaints that are already in the legal system or being handled by another ADR or regulatory authority. Nor do we represent entities with an annual turnover in excess of 2 million, meaning that if you are an SMME and generating below 2 million, you are, in terms of the CPA, a consumer, and you can be able to lodge a complaint with our office. We are answerable to the National Consumer Commission, and we thank the Deputy Commissioner for making time to be here with us this morning. We also report to the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition and our Board of Directors, some of which I can see around the venue this morning. Thank you for making time, and thank you for your continuous support. Our board is responsible for strategic input and oversight, but do not get involved in resolving disputes. In terms of our MOI, the board allows for seats between 9 and 15 directors, comprising of representation from the retail sector, the manufacturing sector, consumer bodies, industry associations, and independent directors. Under the code, only the ombudsman and the relevant staff can adjudicate complaints, thus maintaining their independence. The CGSO itself is relatively a small organization. We have a team of 36 full-time staff who handle everything from responding to queries, lodging complaints, and gathering of information, mediating with suppliers, and providing feedback to complainants and suppliers. We also conduct all CPA trainings and manage stakeholder engagements and consumer awareness campaigns in-house. Isn't that wonderful? In the year under review, which is the 2023-2024 financial year, we responded to over 33,000 queries, most sent through our emails or our in-house call center. We captured 11,282 new complaints, which is up by 6.8% from the previous year. Of this, 1,885 fell out of our jurisdiction, meaning that there were complaints about services or products that have their own regulatory body or the Ombud with jurisdiction, such as the motor industry Ombud, and I saw our representative from our sister company here, or other Ombuds with jurisdiction. We try to prevent our out-of-jurisdiction complaints from entering the system, as they are time-consuming and take up resources that could otherwise be used elsewhere. Just 3 years ago, in 2021 financial year, these out-of-jurisdiction complaints hovered below about 5,000 mark, but have been trending downward steadily thanks to the decision tree that we implemented on our website and the introduction of our business WhatsApp account. I mean, today, who doesn't have a WhatsApp account? Everybody likes to WhatsApp, so we are also present there. We closed 10,140 cases within an average of 41 days. In terms of the code, we have 60 business days to close complaints. In the process, we facilitated refunds to the value of 12.1 million. Interestingly, the actual amount that was claimed by consumers was just under 80 million rands. But this is because consumers often mistakenly try to claim consequential damages. One such example that we have dealt with this year is a complainant who sought our assistance in claiming over 703,000 for damages following an incident in which the battery of his mobile phone exploded. The complainant wanted the supplier to compensate him for post-traumatic stress based on the risk being severely burned, potential damage to the home, and the risk such as an incident posed to the lives of the people, his pets, and valuables in his house. The supplier rejected the claim, however, because there was no proof that the battery exploded due to a manufacturer's defect. And the matter was closed because the CPA makes no provision for consequential damages. We also hosted 24 CPA training sessions, which are free of charge to all our participants that are signed up and paid up, and are useful in ensuring that the frontline staff of our participants are acquainted on how to apply the CPA. This is one of the perks of being a paid-up participant of the CGSO. Last year, we welcomed about 310 employees from participant suppliers on our CPA sessions. We also launched our mobile app, and I believe that all of us have already downloaded the app on our phone, as part of our 10th anniversary celebrations that we did last year. In the 10 months since the launch of the app has attracted about 1,380 users. And the app allows you to lodge your complaint, track the progress of your complaint, and also chat to our friendly staff. In addition to mediating and assessing consumer complaints, a large part of our mandate is consumer education, especially in creating more savvy online shoppers. We do not levy any external agencies or run any media or social media campaigns using outside agencies, but we do it in-house. We do not pay for media either. The 24.8 million that you see in AVE is entirely earned. And last but not least, we grew our participant base by 35% year on year. And thanks to our internal staff, Kateho and the team, and also our MRT recoveries outsourced company that helps us to sign up participants. So this was made possible thanks to the 1,833 participants that represent a retail footprint of about 26,872 outlets right around South Africa. None of this would be possible without our valued participants, many of whom I'm delighted to see here today. Thank you for supporting us. Without industry support, we could not provide this service or fulfill our mandate. Every rand refunded, every faulty product that was replaced or repaired, and every consumer advisory and online shopping cautionary used was made possible by these participants. We are truly grateful for their ongoing commitment and raising the standard of conduct in our sector, educating consumers on their rights and redress available to them, and making it possible to provide effective and efficient alternative dispute resolution scheme. Although this is mandatory for qualifying suppliers, to register in the CGSO scheme and to contribute towards the funding of the scheme, you can see that it has been a challenging exercise to try and bring entities on board. You can see from inception there, starting from 2013 up until today when we celebrate our 2024 financial results or results at large. This is a major concern for us, not just because it affects the quality and scope of the services we are able to provide, but because it's also not fair to those organizations that comply with the code. By the way, in terms of the code, we do not only deal with complaints of complainants that are signed up or suppliers that are signed up to the scheme, but we deal with all complaints that are brought to our attention as an organization. So you can imagine, whether it's a spaza shop, informal shop, whoever is in the supply chain, if a complainant has a complaint, they can go back to their supplier, and if they are not happy about the outcome, they escalate to us, and we are forced in terms of our mandatory code to deal with all those complaints. Our funding model provides for 8 categories of suppliers based on their annual turnover at group level. Participants pay a once-off fee that ranges from 504 for the businesses with an annual turnover between 1 million and 50 million. Very affordable. And it ranges to 54,000 for companies with a turnover over 5 billion rands. So it escalates according to how much turnover you generate as a supplier per annum. After that, they also pay an annual participation fee based on their declared turnovers. Small businesses with a turnover less than 1 million, and this is an exciting part, they are required by the code to sign up, but they don't have to pay anything. So if you are an SMME, which generates less than 1 million, you are required to sign up, but you don't have to pay a fee. With that, you know, I think we give credit to also the declaratory order that was resolved about 2-3 years ago in 2021. That tried to, I think it helped a lot in clearing the uncertainty that was existing in the industry. And we are seeing, as you can see, the trajectory that we are moving upwards. And we are just below 2,000 participants at group level at the moment. As a result, I think we've been able to increase our participant levels this year by 35% year on year, which is a trajectory that we expect to maintain. In addition to the reported activities that I have spoken about, we have appointed the new ombudsman, Mr. Lee Subrati, a qualified attorney who joined us in July 2023 from the Credit Ombud. The 35% uptick of the new participants also increased our revenue, which were up by 24% year on year. The expenditure was in line with budget, allowing us to maintain a healthy cash reserves in excess of 18 months. And I'm proud to report that the 10th consecutive clean audit since inception. So if you know, you know why we're getting that. We are continuously benchmarking ourselves from governance perspective, which is why the board decided to establish an environmental, social, and governance committee at the end of the financial year. The governance pillar has firm policies driving it, but the social pillar still needs a little bit of streamlining, and the environmental aspect is still work in progress. The social element of our ESG commitment is closely tied to the theme of this year's annual report, leaving no one behind. This brings me to one of the most exciting achievements of the 2023 financial year, our collaboration with academia, and I can see some of them here. In the previous financial year, encouraged by the National Consumer Commission, our office developed a policy to ensure that the rights and needs of our consumers are protected, especially those that may not have the means or capacity to protect themselves. The policy recognizes the challenges faced by vulnerable groups defined by the national or their financial hardship, age, physical or mental health issues, disability, language barriers. By the way, our call center is able to assist consumers in all South African languages, including we managed to also translate our complaints guide in all South African languages, including Braille. So I think that is one of the achievements that, as an organization, we can pride ourselves with. We also putting into practice that vulnerable policy, the vulnerable consumer policies, wherein consumers, as they sign off their phone in, our system is able to pick that up and be able to give that life and be able to give us an opportunity to implement. The policy recognizes the challenges faced by our vulnerable groups, and we make sure that we're reaching those consumers furthest behind, and it is essential that we are promoting fairness and prevent exploitation. Putting this into practice can be challenging as an NPO on a limited budget, which is why we reached out to like-minded organizations with an interest of promoting consumer welfare and social justice. The results has been some of the incredibly exciting collaborative projects with the law faculties of various public and private universities around South Africa. This initiative with our local universities is at the heart of our commitment to leaving no one behind. In addition to helping us extend our reach and piggybacking on the university's respective outreach programs to rural underserved communities, it is also helping us to boost our awareness of the value of the alternative dispute resolution process amongst the law graduates. Additionally, our mobile app launched in May 2023 is designed to make sure that complaints and follow-up processes are as simple and accessible as possible for those with access to data and technology. Our community outreach programs, both with the universities and the provincial consumer offices. In the current financial year, we have also increased our engagement with stakeholders, especially consumers and suppliers. Now, as you can look in the next slide here, it's going to show us the type of complaints that we are receiving in 2024 financial year and the sectors that generated them. As in the previous years, the vast majority of complaints related to goods, agreements, services, followed by deposits. This is a slide down. It's slightly down from the prior year's results, where these three categories comprised of 94% of all complaints. So this year, they are accounting for 89% of complaints overall. While the number of complaints of these three categories was roughly the same as in 2023 financial year, the number of complaints about marketing almost doubled year on year, from 233 complaints to 450 in the year under review, most around telemarketing and misleading adverts. The next most significant sector was appliances, including complaints directed to manufacturers and retailers at 18%. And in third place were complaints around purchases relating to satellite and telecommunications at 16%. Online transactions have consistently yielded the largest number of complaints since lockdown in 2020. This year, however, the percentage fell from 34% to 26%. While it is tempting to hope that our education campaigns have made more savvy consumers, it could also mean that consumers are turning to brick and mortar. They are returning back to brick and mortar stores, and that they are probably finding redress elsewhere, such as the chargeback request through their banks. Or in 2023 South African Consumer Experience Report, as it suggests, consumers have simply adjusted their expectations, and good is fast becoming good enough. If that's true, and consumers have lowered their expectations as to what constitutes a great customer experience, it's a tremendous opportunity for suppliers that can go an extra mile. So if we drill down the complaints by product and services, 17% of complaints related to online transactions, as you can see. 12% related to electronic or electrical appliances, and 10% were related to telecommunications and satellite services. This includes complaints against DSTV, Showmax, and other streaming services, as well as issues around out-of-cell phone contracts, which are arising out of cell phone contracts, fiber or Wi-Fi. Handsets, however, have their own category, which showed 804 complaints. 8% of all complaints related to defective phone purchases. When we are examining the nature of complaints, the things that upsets consumers the most are goods not being delivered on time, or goods that become defective within 6 months of purchase, and poor service when attending to resolve those, where consumers are attempting to resolve those complaints. It is especially common when it comes to online shopping. As you may be aware, we do not accept any complaints unless consumers has at least tried to engage with the supplier. That is because our job as the CGSO is not to replace suppliers' customer care department, but rather to step in and help where there is a dispute or where the consumer is unhappy with the outcome of the complaint, either because the consumer is being unreasonable or the supplier is at fault. That's where we come in and mediate those consumer complaints. Poor services examples include companies that ghost the customers, which is particularly prevalent in services and online transactions. Another one is forcing customers to accept a repair on goods that become defective within 6 months, and not giving them an option of a refund or a replacement. In terms of Section 56, subsection 2 of the Consumer Protection Act, it specifically provides that within 6 months after the delivery of any goods and to a consumer may return the goods to the supplier without penalty at the supplier's risk and expense. If the goods fail to satisfy the requirements and standard contemplated in Section 55, and the supplier must, at the direction of the consumer, either repair, replace the failed or unsaved product, or the supplier must refund the consumer the price paid by the consumer for those goods. This implied warranty of quality is one of the most common complaints that we received in our office. Fortunately, when dealing with participants that are signed up with the CGSO, it is fairly straightforward. The problem arises when consumers experience issues with goods purchased online from companies that are not based in South Africa. As you are aware, the CPA is applicable in South Africa. We have no jurisdiction over these entities that are outside South Africa. The best we can do is to provide consumers with knowledge and on how to spot and avoid problematic e-commerce sites. And the Ombudsman will talk more on this later during our panel discussion. Now let's take a look at what the complaints, where the complaints came from. As you can see the map there. Our various outreach programs run in conjunction with the Consumer Protection Forum's members that we are a member of have revealed that significant lack of awareness of consumers right in the rural and needy communities, which could go some way to account for a low number of complaints emanating more in the rural provinces such as the Northern Cape, Eastern Cape, Free State, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and Northwest. Our collaboration with academia is part of our strategy to close this knowledge gap via the respective universities' legal outreach programs. We also devoted more resources this year to consumer education and continue to work closely with consumer protection forums, other Ombud offices, the NGOs in the consumer protection education spaces. The media are also important partners when it comes to protecting and informing consumers. On behalf of everyone at the CGSO, I'd like to take this time to give a big shout out to the consumer media who supports our work in this respect and investigate deceptive and misleading practices. This is our engagements with the community radios, digital platforms where they write about our work and everything that we do. We say thank you. Since most of consumers find us via the internet or the social media, our website, we have stepped up our online presence to ensure that we are visible and accessible on all social media platforms. And we urge you that you please follow us on all our social media platforms. We are even on TikTok, by the way. Of the 10,141 cases that were opened during the year, we were unable to proceed with 2,302 complaints. This includes 1,885 cases that were referred elsewhere and 179 cases that had to be closed because a parallel legal process was underway. Of the remaining 7,838 cases, 60% resulted in favorable outcome for the consumers, compared to 55% in the previous year. The Ombud found fully in favor of 38% of complainants, which is 30% if you calculate it as a percentage of total complaints received. 14%, this is 1,139 cases that we resolved directly between the supplier and the complainant within the first 15 days. And assistance was provided in 5% of cases. Examples of this include cases where consumers were given vouchers, coupons, discounts, or other gestures of goodwill, including offers to cancel the agreement. The complaint was partially upheld in 126 cases. 15% were not upheld by the Ombudsman. Of concern are these 19% of cases which we had to close due to non-cooperation from suppliers, resulting in about 1,405 termination notices that we had to issue. By comparison, only 18% or 18 participants rejected our recommendations. As you know that we have no powers to make binding rulings, all we make is recommendations, and neither the supplier nor the consumers are obliged to accept our recommendations. So majority of the suppliers are receiving our recommendations and applying them. Only 18 of them rejected them in the year under review. It constitutes about 1% of the complaints that we handled in the year under review. We routinely monitor consumer experiences when dealing with us. While not everybody will be happy with the outcome, especially if we don't agree with their assessment of the situation, we have full control over these 4 metrics. That is how thoroughly we engage with complaints, in explaining what is happening with the complaint, how well we explain the outcome of the complaint, how easy it is to contact us, and the level of courtesy and respect we accord to them. Respect and empathy are the 2 core values of the CGSO. I am pleased to see that 92% of the 7,279 complaints said that we treated them with respect. Is that not good? I think it deserves a hand. Supplier feedback is relatively new, is a new measurement that we implemented, which explains the poor response rate. We urge suppliers to please engage with us around the experience so that we can better understand their pain points and address them accordingly. I want to end this presentation with a message to those businesses that have not yet joined us or have not yet joined the Ombud scheme. If you are unsure whether you are obliged to sign up with the CGSO scheme, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We will advise you whether you are eligible to join in terms of Section 5.1 of the Consumer Goods and Services Industry Code. I urge you not to see this as a regulatory burden. Or rather, I would rather advise that you see this as a public service that ensures a fair play and raises the standard of conduct in the sector. This is to everyone's attention or advantage. In the words of our chairman, Mr. Lawrence, he doesn't like to be called Mr. Lawrence, by the way, Michael Lawrence. Having a functional ADR system oils the wheels of the commerce by creating confidence in the sector. Additionally, our work to educate the public on the Consumer Protection Act also supports the industry. If informed consumers can spot fraudsters and predators, they will likely choose ethical organizations such as yours. Even in the best-run companies, however, glitches and oversights are inevitable. When this happens, our job is not to take the sides or to monitor the report, but to support industry by facilitating a fair and independent dispute resolution process. Thus, our role is primarily a relational builder. It's not just complaints who benefit from our legal know-how and understanding of the CPA. As a participant, you also have access to our legal opinion without incurring any legal fees. Facilitation also facilitation also has none of the negative publicity risk of court proceedings. And while you have the benefits of an expert opinion, you are not bound by it, as you would be in a court of law. Let me take this opportunity and appreciate our dedicated CGSO staff, and some of them are here and others are joining online. Please stand so that we can give you a hand of appreciation for the good work that you do. Thank you. I also want to thank our board of directors for the continuous oversight and the support. Thank you for continuously helping us and making sure that the CGSO is what it is today. And everyone else, our stakeholders, our friends, and everybody who's here in person or online, thank you for taking time to be with us today. Thank you.
So let's move on to a part where we're going to unpack even more what you told us about. And I hope that you really listened in and you were able to craft some questions for later on. But I do want to invite the rest of my panelists to join me up front. We have the Ombud joining us himself. That's Lee Subrathi. Thank you so much. Let's give him a round of applause. You can see him, but he looks so Ombuddy. A little bit frightening, you know, but I'll be calm and just pull myself to myself. And I can't say the same for the chair, who's very accessible and fashionable. And that's Michael Lawrence, as he likes to be referred.
Yeah, sure.
So let me join them. I think there's so much for us to appreciate in South Africa about the structures we have for governance to maintain very healthy industries, right? We see it as a function, and I don't know what perspectives people have, but there's a lot to be said that the work that you are doing is really contributing to the sector's health and enabling international organizations, SMEs, local, medium-sized, everybody's able to participate much more effectively when the environment is healthy. But perhaps I want to start with you, Chair. When you have a look at the global perspective and then the local perspective, what do I mean by that? Where do we see the benefits of that health that comes from an entity like this?
So the best part of, Zanele, the best part of global is to actually recognize that we all kind of village people in and of ourselves. We very quickly work out who we should go to for help, who we should go to for assistance in different things, whether it's a medical requirement or a loaf of bread that we want to buy, or it's a shoulder to cry on. We very quickly work out who our preferred service provider is. And typically, it has everything to do with how they treat us in respect of what we're needing from them. And this experience has been established globally. So we have a global consumer movement. And in fact, with social media, the consumer awareness and the consumer voice has become wonderfully heard and even wonderfully aggressive in some ways and in many, many instances. We're joining that family of allowing the consumer voice to be properly articulated. But that then helps business to be better at providing goods and services. And so we're part of a global family. We make sure that there is a continuous learning from the global community, not just for these two good folk here, but for the staff team that services us. And we think that it's as simple as we're a global part of making sure that villages work better.
But what you're also taking away is that, I mean, I've been in the industry for long. Remember marketing in the day, they used to say 20%. What 20% of people complain about your business, it multiplies by 20 every single time because one person will tell 20, 20 will tell another 20. Now you are on a marketing campaign to expand the knowledge so that instead of people telling other people, they've got a place to go to complain and get a retribution. So marketing must be very important for you. And how are you enabling it now to expand in the whole country?
Definitely. So we want to tell our own story. We don't want the 20% to go and talk to the 20%, especially when it's a negative story. But when it's a positive story, what we are doing is we are collaborating with the institutions of higher learning. They have their legal clinics within the universities, and they have a lot of outreach campaigns that they do to the villages, to the marginalized communities. So we are collaborating with them. We are making sure that I think in the next year, in the next few months, we will be launching, this year we're starting with about 3 provinces wherein we want to put in a walk-in center within the universities where people can actually walk in and because we have seen over the years, in the beginning we had very few walk-in consumers. You'll be amazed to see that people still walk into the organization, especially now after COVID, where we thought that everybody's moving online. We're seeing that people are coming back and they still actually want to walk in and talk to a human. So we are making sure that we provide that opportunity. But also our vulnerable consumers, especially the elderly, and those that are in the uttermost part of the country, they don't always have the luxury of using internet. While that's why we are saying we are leaving no one behind. We are not focusing only to those that can afford the internet and everything. We also want to go and make sure that, as Michael has said, he spoke to the villages and the elderly people that are in the villages. We want to make sure that redress get to them also. Because those are the most vulnerable, because they have very few choices in terms of choosing the retailers or suppliers that they can trade with. So we want to make sure that education gets to them, and when consumers know better, they do better, and they start to demand it even from the suppliers.
Yeah.
And that is how we want awareness to go out there.
I think Queen's being very sophisticated about it. I think also from South African perspective, when you complain, you want to be able to say, Mamelala.
Yela.
Right?
Jongala.
Jongap. Like, this is not working for me. So maybe the verbal approach allows them to do that. But there's a framework as well that you are putting in place to govern some of these. And I think this is the technicality that is the benefit to consumers that are complaining. And I want to give you the opportunity to just talk to a little bit around how are you governing complaints and what is upholding the structure for you when customers come in to complain?
So if you hear the sentiments, village, collaboration, we essentially are a village of people. I mean, the village of entities. And the consumer goods and services Ombud is a baby. Needs a village to raise it, to nurture it. And our customer, the consumer, and we rate our customer by the most vulnerable. Active listening is an important tool for us. It's because consumers in this space, they want to be heard. They want somebody on the other line to engage with them. And we are trying to incorporate it as part of our framework. And at a space where we have e-commerce at such a high rate, where consumers are engaging daily, our framework is built around the vulnerable consumer. How are consumers receiving the message? How are they better informed? I know previously we spoke about limitations because we are a creature of statute in terms of our accreditation. However, nothing prevents us from communicating, from taking consumers on a proactive journey. How can you better inform yourselves so that you not only protect yourself, but protect others? I mean, the end goal is we want less disputes. We don't want a lot of disputes. It's because more dispute shows that we are not performing in certain areas. So the framework is built around the consumer. How can we educate them? How can we equip them? But most of all, how can we make the method of redress available to them, as in now, because they need redress right now.
So you're speaking a lot about the consumer and that it's designed for the consumer. But there's a portion of that where the village of retailers is also having to step up because you are there. And Michael, perhaps speak to me about the landscape of that village and how do we make them step up? And you're welcome to also jump in later.
Mm-hmm. So the deal for both manufacturers and retailers, retailers obviously are the face, and we think retail often because of goods, but we're about goods and services. So let's not forget that sometimes it's about being quite direct to a service provider as well. Increasingly, and again, it's a very simple equation. The people who come back to buy from my store are the people who are happy the first time. So in retail now, it's about focused marketing. It's about making sure you get a great experience. It's about making sure that the experience meets the needs of your interests. I love hiking. I constantly get online ads about shoes and jackets and funny things to wear and use all the time because I love hiking. I like brooches. I get messages about brooches all the time. It's the most wonderful thing. You should try it sometime. and it's about making sure that our consumers are targeted, and targeting them is about making sure that they're happier, so that they come back. And really, you want. I studied economics a long time ago, longer than the age of many people in this room, I'm sure. And one of the first things I learned was successful economies are economies where our rand circulates within the economy. That shows good health. Now, what is that about? I keep you happy, you come back, you spend your money with me, I go and find other goods and service providers to spend that money with, and we end up being a healthy economy. The national fiscus grows, tax opportunities in the fiscus, and it just makes everything work better. That's the contribution we're bringing as retail, and I represent a large number of retailers. I know a large number of retail representatives in the room here who are determined to make sure that good consumer protection is part of the way we do business.
Mm. And that means there's a lot of work that then also needs to be done from the office side, right? To ensure that you're putting in place the right things for the value proposition. So you've got members who are paying and happily understanding the role that you play. Why make the decision to then cover everybody versus those only who are part of your committed members? And then how do you also balance, do they understand the contribution that they are making and are doing it so happily knowing that others are not coming on board?
Okay, let me talk to the choosing. The code that we operate under, the Consumer Goods and Services Industry Code, it's an industry's initiative in terms of the CPA to start the Ombud. So as an Ombud, we need to be independent. We are impartial. That means that we are neither for consumer nor for the supplier. We stand in the middle. And to what Michael has said earlier, that returning consumers, going back and buying, our role is to make sure that we restore that relationship between the consumer and the retailer, especially in the village, space. If you can have a mind picture of a village where you walk to a retailer, you want to make sure that the retailer goes back to that, the consumer goes back to that retailer. So our role is to mediate. And in terms of our complaints process, we insist that consumers must first go back to the retailer or the service provider where they got the goods, and then go and complain and seek their redress. Only when they are unhappy, then they escalate to us. Therefore, we are not replacing that. We want to make sure that that relationship is restored and consumers continue to buy there. And I know that suppliers, some of them, I think so far I spoke about 1,833 suppliers at group level that have signed up as at the 29th of February. So I think we've covered most of the known retailers. The challenge is still here in the middle and also in the informal sector. And that is where we are going to. We are engaging with other regulators in that space. But I think suppliers, those that are on board, they can see the value that they are adding in the industry and making sure that consumers are getting their redress. I spoke about the 12.1 million that we have facilitated to make sure that the consumers get back. Imagine if we didn't exist. It means that that money would have just gone and consumers would have walked away without that redress. But through our involvement and our existence as the CGSO, we make sure that we facilitate and make sure that consumers, where it's due, they get their redress. Mm-hmm. And that's why we also offer that education, CPA training to the client facing and that is a benefit that some of the suppliers are taking for granted. You don't only pay, the amount that they pay, it's about 0.004% of their turnover per annum. It's a drop it's not even that much. And we've committed since inception that the more suppliers come on board, we will review our structure and lower the fees. We've already done that twice since inception. We have reduced their fees. So we continue to urge suppliers to come on board. What they are contributing is making a difference. And we want to continue to do that and also be able to reach many more consumers that are out there, which sometimes we are not able to due to our limited budget.
And it's so interesting that you're enabling the smallest of things, which could even be as simple as encouraging me to go back to the store, which on its own is education for me, because I think a lot of us really shy away from returning back to the store and then right up to actually redressing. So I think the job is really, there's a huge spectrum of support that you provide. Then there's complexity that comes in because now we're also moving into digital types of shopping. We're shopping a lot online. We know that we're working with a lot of, I don't know how many times, we get stuff delivered to our doorstep. How are you keeping a handle on the complexity that's arising?
So, when it comes to electronic transactions, we don't just deal with one act. There's multiple acts you have to take into account because we have a consumer who's transacting with an entity online, and sometimes they don't know the entity, the source of the entity, where they comes from. So we use the CPA as the test, as the sort of reference point. What does the law say? But I think there's something interesting about the concept of an ADR and an Ombud is because it provides the platform for suppliers to learn and for consumers to be informed. We had many occasions where suppliers were either realigned their processes, they made updates online, they sort of changed terms and conditions simply because we made them aware of how the consumer is protected and how they can protect themselves from too much of negative attraction or sometimes complaints. Because the whole concept of a complaint, it automatically brings a sort of an adversarial sort of nature. But what we're trying to say is that there is possibility of a future relationship. as the chair said, and as the CEO mentioned, is that we want an economy whereby the consumer can trust the supplier. Supplier can exist is because they are making a profit and because they both need each other. The concept of mediation, especially when it comes to online transactions, and I know the whole concept of online transactions scares a lot of people. Some people don't transact. Some people transact maybe too much, which is why you have to be informed. You have to educate yourself. And as a consumer goods and services ombud, we only are exposed to what the public brings to us, which is why as soon as we get even the slightest hint of a sort of a rogue entity, or we find a website is taking advantage of consumers, we immediately issue a consumer alert. We have Jack in the team who tries their best to try and publicize this, because at the end of the day, it's about education. It's about spreading the word. And as much as we want to regulate the entire space, it's obviously the e-commerce space is global. It's vast. You can communicate with an entity that's in another country. They can be locally in your own backyard. It's all about being proactive, educating one another, but also holding suppliers accountable. I mean, we have many reputable online retailers locally that engage with us about building a relationship, building a product that's safe so that consumers can trust you and they have a prospect of a future relationship even when they have a complaint that's not resolved in their favor.
So this complexity, that's the online complexity, and I don't know if you've spent time really delving into it, but consumers are really at risk to fraudulent activity online. They're really at risk to manipulation online, and it's growing. I mean, it's across all sectors. You know, whether there's the gambling bit, then there's this just outright siphoning of money. You know, so what do you think is the agility that you're creating in the system that's going to cover even a bigger base?
So can I jump in and say, I think the challenge for us is a consumer, in the first instance, has a responsibility to take their own education process down a journey. That's where it has to start. You know, as a parent, I never expected schools to instill certain values in my kids. As a retailer, I expect the consumer, in the first instance, to take responsibility for. Do some research. Check out what you're doing. There are lots of online opportunities. Some of them are great. Some of them are going to be wonderful for your pocket. Some of them are going to give you wonderful experiences. Some of them are going to lead you on to other new opportunities. And some of them are going to take you down a dark hole that are going to make you wish like you'd never started that journey in the first place. But it's about actually also making sure you are educating yourself. We know there are crooks out there. We know there are problem traders out there. What we don't want is to tar everyone with the same brush and to call everyone just because they're based in a certain country or just because they operate on a certain type of platform. That's nonsense. We have to be a lot more intelligent and sophisticated than that. But we also, as consumers, need to take responsibility for it. Those of us who are local service providers, goods providers, we make huge efforts to educate on a consistent basis. We work with government to try and make sure that even in the schooling curriculum, there is regular education on how to be a good consumer, a good practitioner with the rands and cents that come your way. But it's about building a community of care and caring and carefulness in the education that we take responsibility for ourselves.
Those are very, I think, critical and important points. You know, self-ownership of education, and it shouldn't happen through mistakes. And oftentimes we are learning from other people's mistakes versus actually being proactive about what is it we need to do to protect ourselves. But taking that narrative into the work that you're doing around education, what platforms are you using? How vast are you going in? And what's fit for purpose in this era?
Yeah, it took us time to learn. So we're one of the ombuds that gather a lot of information. As we know that in this era, data is gold. So we listen to consumers. Wherever we find that consumers are, we try and find them in the space where they are. Last year, we have launched a mobile app because we see that the world is moving that way. But as Michael is saying, we are not wanting to paint everyone with the same brush. So we do exist. We've got a website wherein consumers can contact us and lodge complaints. I spoke about the call center wherein people can phone in. We use those platforms as education platforms. Even our app, we are enhancing it to try and put in more information which is more educational to make sure that it remains active and it's busy. It's helping and serving a certain community. We are using webinars. We also going to have provincial workshops wherein we go to each province and we call upon all the suppliers who are in that province to engage with them. Similarly with the consumers, we are collaborating with other offices. We belong to a consumer protection forum where all regulators that operate in the consumer space meet and we share, good practices, what we are doing, we learn from each other. We collaborate with them because it's expensive to go to all these places with the small budgets that we have. So what we do when we go to any other province or wherever that we are going, we call each other so that we can share the cost. We go there, and that way we are able to reach many, many more consumers out there. We are constantly actually learning more and finding out where else can we do that. If we go to social media, we are there. We are there also. We host webinars occasionally wherein we will see based on the complaints that we are receiving. The Ombudsman spoke about online. We have recently did a webinar wherein we were covering what was the topic? I think we're talking about the solar services, yes, solar services, wherein we're addressing that matter, because that is where we are seeing complaints around that. So where we see a lot of complaints in a certain sector, we will call an expert, we will facilitate that and use that as an education platform. We tap into some of the complaints that we have dealt with and how they were resolved. On our even on the annual report, which everyone will receive today, and even download online, we've got some case studies that we are referring to, some of the live complaints or real complaints that we dealt with, so that we use it as educational to our consumers. We are using every platform possible, making sure that we are leaving no one behind.
So I think that the good work that you are doing, I'd like to ask Lee to talk about how are we positioned in the continent, as an ombuds in this space. Are we playing a leading role? What's happening outside of our borders?
What I can tell you is that we try. We try our best to do so because we know that I think the positive thing is that we are invited to a lot of platforms that have other regulators, other ombuds officers, engaging, sharing information. Is because the ombud space can often become, as an office, a lonely space is because you're dealing with a specific type of complaint, in the way you're dealing with it. And I think it gives us a chance in order for us to sort of test each other's processes, what's working, what's not working, be the leader or leaders rather together to ensure that we are champions of complaints resolution, but at the same time that we're also promoting fair trade, because it's about fair trade at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And it's quite interesting to look at what other offices are doing. And it could be in the motor industry, it could be in other spaces, in the financial industry, because when ombuds come together, especially on that level, the ultimate goal is to provide a method of redress. While we may not be subject matter experts on every single product or every single device, I think the better sort of skills that we have is we know where to find the information, we know who to speak to, and it's about getting the consumer to speak to the supplier. In this whole process, and this is what the whole ADR process is designed to do, is to create an environment for the parties to engage and avoid the lengthy court process, to avoid cost, to avoid the frustration of delays. We know these days to wait for a court date, you wait months, sometimes years, depending on the amount of the claim. And what we find that many ombuds do is that they leverage of the ability to control the environment when it comes to a dispute resolution. I mean, you have your members, you educate them, and we're seeing that not only within South Africa, we're seeing that also on a continental level. I mean, we've engaged with other countries. We were recently in Botswana where we engaged with other regulators and ombuds. And it's so interesting to see that everybody is focused on one thing and one thing alone, and that is to, like the chair was mentioning, in order to get the economy going, provide the method of redress, but at the same time inform suppliers that they have a duty, they have an obligation like the code, which is obligatory for everyone that supplies goods and services, even the guy at the corner that's selling that packet of chips to a child or to a school child, whatever. They have an obligation to sell goods that are safe, that they can be trusted, And I think we have an obligation as different bodies to lead the narrative. Even if it's a particular body, how can we collaborate so that we can not only influence policy, but make the whole dispute resolution consumer space a better one for everyone?
And I think you're being humble. I mean, the organization was established in 2013, so many years ahead of a lot of our African counterparts. So when Lee's talking about engaging, you probably often asked to be an expert contributor to what we are doing and what we've done exceptionally well. I think we must take that. We must take the fact that we really have a lot of years and a lot of experience to share with the rest of the continent. And now we enter into the online global world where we have, and I mean, it would be a disappointment not to talk about these online mass selling stores. And whilst the stories are hilarious sometimes of what people order versus what they actually get, and there are lots of fantastic good stories as well, right? Because consumers are really getting what they want at really cheap prices. But how are you then called in, even in the case where I order an air fryer and it comes looking like a pot?
Let the buyer beware. That's the nature of the business. Again, we're coming back to, there are a host of stories of people who have gotten very bad experiences. I just think on the other side, and it's not just the other side of the coin, equally, the reason that there's a constant uptake is because there are a host of people who have had very good experiences. In terms of their own consumer experience, that's been very good. Yes, in the business world, there's always an appeal for, is everything being done fairly? Do we have circularity issues being addressed? The green agenda is very big globally, and so are we making sure that all products, which we can't see source and source inputs of, are green responsible? Are we always sure that there are fair labor practices in the production of those products? Because we can be a lot more vigilant when it's a local product. But at the end of the day, there are some wonderful experiences. And my day job is looking after clothing retailers. We love the fact that the consumer has experience about fabrics and styling and new ideas and new thoughts, and our design community suddenly switches on and starts looking at what's different and how do we do things differently. I mean, for goodness sakes, life is about just being happy and identifying the best of the best for ourselves all the time. When that comes with a breakdown in the consumer protection relationship, then we have concerns as CGSO. Then, of course, we have to respond. At that point, we have to say, our consumers in South Africa are protected by a wonderful Consumer Protection Act, which has a whole architecture of regulatory and code environments to support it, and we're part of that engagement. And we would like the South African consumer to be getting the benefit of that comfort and protection on an ongoing basis. That means we're going to have to do some very interesting things in the way in which we engage. Let's talk about, you spoke about regionally, we're a part of a customs union, SACU, the oldest customs union in the world. How do we engage as a customs union to protect the consumer? That's a conversation we're going to have to take forward. How do we engage as SADC, which goes all the way up to Tanzania, DRC? How do we engage in that environment, which is constantly looking at the regional value chains and integrating regionally what we do economically? How do we protect the consumer? These are important conversations we have going forward. And as you said, we've got a great team with a great decade now of knowledge that can be taken forward into that. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area, big on everyone's lips. We've been wonderful champions of it as South Africa. What does that mean for consumer protection? We've got a whole new menu of opportunities to look at in terms of the way we manage consumer protection going forward. And so it's not just about our vulnerable consumers that Queen spoke about, which we've been so focused on and done such great jobs locally. We've now got a whole new play space to work with, which is important, not just for consumer protection, but for the very integrity and functionality of trade that is going to be so important in even contributing towards the development of Africa as a continent with commercial strength.
And to build on that, I mean, I think it sounds that the world has become, the continent has become one.
Yes.
Post-COVID, it's flat now. We really want to trade with one another. So the free trade agreement is a huge and important part of that. And then we spoke about the global complexity. What does it mean from the legality aspect for you? Has it increased the level of complexity, or do you find uniformity and a united way of thinking about the fact that ultimately we're wanting to enable trade?
I think we must be grateful because we have one of the best consumer protection laws, I think, globally. I mean, it covers every area, from electronic transactions all the way down to your face-to-face transactions, marketing, misrepresentation. I mean, as far as even covering your booking of your wedding venue, it's all there in the Act. But I think the ability for an Act to protect the consumer is dependent on the ability for regulators, for ombuds officers to execute what is fair, to execute what is, and I think we have a lot to learn from each other. So I think we have a global, I mean, we have one of the best pieces of legislation. It's how do we now get that filtered into the outer regions as a continent? You know, how do we engage together? How do we better, I mean, if there's a provision or if there's an application that there's a better way of doing it, together we come together and we find ways of practically implementing it. Because the law can say one thing, but having the powers to implement it is something totally different. But there's also a bigger conversation. And Queen mentioned this earlier, in that when everybody complies, you have a safe space. When everybody complies, everybody is accountable. And what that does is that it not only sort of spreads out the burden of compliance, but also it gets everybody thinking, how can I better the product that I'm working with? How can I make Africa, you know, a global standard? Why not? Why not ask the bigger questions? Why not think and dream as big as we can? Because I think we have a lot to say. I think we've like the chair mentioned, we've played for 10 years. We've done, you know, the groundwork, and now it's about building those connections and opportunities. Is because the experiences and frustrations we experience here is not only local. It's happening in every other country around the world. Smaller businesses are suffering. I mean, even so, entrepreneurs, you know, sole props are suffering. Is because of the pressures of the bigger, you know, entities, and it's about how we bring all of them together, because you have different levels. But what I'm very sort of excited about is that the way we've packaged our participant sort of, or rather the supply end of it, is that we tailor-make the education according to where you are in your journey. Like what may be attractive to a corporate is different to what's attractive to somebody who has a stand around the corner that's selling muffins, for example. Yeah. We tailor-make it so that at the end of the day, we don't have instances where innocent sort of bystanders are hurt in the process of supply of goods and services. That is the key goal. But to answer your question, I do think there's a big role to play. And we use what we have, because, I mean, I think we have one of the best pieces of legislation. But how do we take that to the continent and globally is an initiative that we're working on, because we want to be part of the leadership that takes that forward.
And speaking of the leadership that takes it forward, Queen, what is your ambition? I mean, what gets you into that office every day and pushing the agenda?
Well, I think having to see yourself as making a difference, looking at the results of what we have been able to achieve over the 10 years and what we are anticipating to achieve going forward, I think it kind of propels us to go on. But not to brag, I think last year we also hosted you spoke about internationally. We hosted some SADC office that came to hear from us. What are the best practices? What have you seen? How have you set up? And we are seeing other countries outside of South Africa trying to now learn from us, to say that you are ahead in this area, you have consumer protection. As he said, we've got good consumer protection frameworks to work with. they are coming to hear from us. So that is something that we can also pride ourselves with. But also we know that we haven't achieved it yet. We are not there yet. But as an organization that is on the ground, having to mediate between supplier and consumer, we find ourselves being out the first to hear what is happening on the ground, what are consumers worried about, and we were able to not only facilitate redress for them, but also to kind of pave a way for those that are coming to say this is how it is done, and also learn from our very own mistakes. I mean, we've implemented the code that has been promulgated in 2015. But I think as envisaged when the code was being drafted, we have seen a different story when implementing it. Not everything is playing out the way we have anticipated. We thought that because this is a compulsory code, it will just be, we wake up tomorrow, all the suppliers are signed up, we are moving forward, everybody is coming and giving redress. But it's not like that. We have to constantly go back to them, educate them. Some of them still claim, even today, almost 10 years since the promulgation of the code, we still get suppliers who don't know about the code, which is very disappointing. So we're saying we're taking that, we are learning from that. Then there are new issues that emerge. For instance, jurisdictional issues. Some of the sectors would think that they don't belong, they're not covered by the code. So we constantly have to go back. And now we have submitted some of the changes to the DTIC for amendment, because as we implement, we are finding cracks, we are finding gaps, and we are at the position where we are able to propose what we think will close those gaps and how we think the best can come out of this whole process. So yeah, we are there, we are on the road, we are not there yet, but we are marching on.
I think we're always a work in progress. I think 10 years is an amazing stretch. It's a whole decade. You've got another decade to go, but it's a work in progress. I don't want to hog all the questions, so I do want to take some questions from the floor as well as online. And I left my cell phone, which I think is where I'm going to be getting my WhatsApp. So if somebody can just give that to me, I'd really appreciate it. Yeleng, it's next to the folder there. There it is. Thank you so much. So any questions from the floor? We've got a couple of roving mics. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. I'm scared I'm going to mess up my speaker. So shall we have a look and see if we have any questions online and any questions from the floor?
Here we go.
And while we're waiting for me to catch up and see, do I have one? There we go.
Thank you very much for this exciting day. It's always interesting to see the growth that the CGSO has experienced. Congratulations to both you, Queen, and the Ombudsman and the Chairperson. I think you touched on my question, and I'm sitting here with my colleague. He's like, that's the answer. But I still want to know, because you did say that you do recommend some changes, but this is more on a code aspect. Have you done some work on the CPA itself and see what areas within the CPA are not implementable? Because in South Africa, we have a tendency of putting out regulations and acts and not really review if they are practical in the workplace. I will go to the CPA, for instance. There's a clause that talks about donations, especially of food, that says throughout the value chain, whoever's been responsible for that food is produced, if they were to donate it, they are still responsible. So from the agriculture right to the manufacturer up until the retailer. So which means that retailers are not doing food donations and manufacturers don't want retailers to do food donations, and we have more than 50% people going hungry in South Africa. And this food are either thrown away or given to food banks that are still viable. So what I just want to check, because the Ombud office or the Ombud as an office has that responsibility and engagement with the DTIC. Have you gone to say these are not really practical within the sector from your suppliers to say how do we change those?
A very, very important question. We've been sitting on it for a long time in this industry. What are we doing about the responsibility in the value chain when something could be given out for good, but we can't because of a regulation.
Let me
wants
jump
to-
on that.
wants to
Okay, let me jump in and I'll let the lawyer answer after that. So the CPA was new for us. And would it be perfect? No. Of course not. Legislation is incredibly difficult to change. Our parliament is a very busy institution. Regulation is a lot easier to change, and the code is even easier to change because it requires a signature of a minister. To do so, it doesn't require the full ambit of what is required for legislation. But we're involved. We have a wonderful institution called NEDLAC, and we have a brand new political architecture that we're all looking forward to working with. Let's face it, a brand new minister in Minister Parks Tau, who has already made some exciting pronouncements about the entire aegis of trade, industry, and competition. And we have no doubt that we are going to be part of his whole new relook and redo. There are things that are going to need to be changed. We've identified a few areas that we think can and should be done better. We're quite clear that Minister Tau, and again, we're taking simply from the pronouncements so far, which are exciting. We have no doubt that Minister Tau is going to give us an opportunity to be fairly interactive. And I'm expecting, as one of the business representatives at the Trade and Industry Chamber at NEDLAC, that an amendment to the Consumer Protection Act is going to be part of what we're going to be discussing in the not-too-distant future. That being said, there are a number of pieces of legislation that require attention simply because things change. We need to get better all the time. But certainly I would expect that industry would be fairly involved in what the new developments are going to be. But maybe I should throw this at the legal person on the platform and say there are substantive ways to address legalities of process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Lee, please lean on this question.
Yeah, so being a legal professional, I'm going to answer the question with a question. Open-ended question. Why is this happening? You know, it's because, I mean, like you're saying, you're seeing the practical or the outcome of what you're seeing. I mean, you're seeing there's hungry mouths that are going unfed. There's this wastage of food. So the question is, why is this not being addressed? And we sit on platforms where the various regulators and consumer bodies come and sit together. These are consumer protection bodies in the various provinces that have their eyes on the ground. They can tell you what a specific city is doing that we can't from a higher national level. And I think it's important to bring these conversations into those forums, you know, which we can do, to look at what is the sentiment, where do we go from here, is because we have people in the room that can either start the conversation so that the higher levels can then start to engage on a higher level. I think, I mean, the statistics are scary. It goes into the millions as to the wastage of foods per year, you know, if you are 50 odd, 60 odd million sort of wastage, you know. So the question is that why are we not addressing it? We have to ask those questions and get guidance from the different provinces. Where is the need? Where is the need? How can we channel that, you know, that supply? But I think most importantly, what is preventing that from eventualizing? What is preventing that from being actively addressed? And the reason why I say why is because it's in those platforms that we get to engage to look, how can we put a plan in place and who do we need to speak to? And then with the assistance of, you know, influential people like the chair and other people around the table on our board, we can start the conversation with the relevant people. And yeah, we'll be excited for what's to come, is because there's going to be a change. There's going to be, the wheels are going to start moving so that we can be fair in our dealings, at the same time address the most important concerns that people are seeing on the ground.
And early on, we just touched on the SDG goals. And key to that is exactly that, is that we have to be playing towards a bigger goal, you know, and link ourselves back. You know, what are we playing towards as an Ombud? Are we playing towards education? Are we playing towards poverty alleviation? You know, where is it that we see ourselves fitting into a greater cause?
Yes.
I don't know, Queen, if you've spent time thinking about, you know, the greater cause that we are aligned to.
Yes, I think that is, as I indicated before, that it's a work in progress, something that we've just instituted, the ESG aspects, because of what we have seen. And I appreciate the question that my colleague has brought in there, that it's through this feedback that propel us to go and do something about it. And we've said it before that we exist because of the people. So the feedback that we get through complaints, through such engagement, help us to now focus on those areas. Because unless there's a complaint or somebody speaks up, sometimes we may not necessarily see everything. So that is what we I think, putting ourselves to do that. But I think going forward as the board and or the entire CGSO, we are now going to sit and make sure that we strategize around ESG to see how do we fit in. What are the aspects that, as an Ombud, I think, and also an NPO, it's not an easy thing to just try and just adopt all those standards, global standards, and see how do we fit in. But we are giving it a shot to say we want to look and see how can we fit in, how far can we go.
Yes.
And it's not gonna be. It's gonna be like a Rome, which was never built in one day. I think it's gonna be a journey.
And what you'll find interesting is that you're already there. I mean, you're already on social impact, right? And that's what sitting right in the middle of ESG is what is it that you are doing but it's about articulating it back. So we're in this for the long haul. Do we have another question from the floor? I've got one over there. If I can get a mic through, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this gathering and the update. I just want to ask, how are you able to convince suppliers who are B2B to join the CGSO? Because I think half the time there will be that resistance that we don't interact with consumers. Why should we join?
Did you get it?
Yeah, how do we persuade them? It's about that carrot and stick thing that we keep having discussions about. And you know more about that than we do.
Yeah. Okay. First, it is law for them to sign up, but we have for the past 10 years used the carrot approach, the education approach. So about 2 years ago, we went and did a survey or a research to see how many registered organizations are there. And we know that the code applies also to those businesses which are not registered. But we were starting there to those that are registered, and we are using that to approach and educate them and help them to sign up. But also, what we use is the complaints generators. As I indicated before, we deal with complaints whether of signed up or non-signed up participants. So we use that as leads to go there and say, this is a complaint that you have against you. We have already started working on it. Just do the right thing. Come on board and help fund this organization which is doing such a great job. So we don't always get a thumbs up. We have those people that push back. Sometimes they drag their feet. It's amazing how after 10 years you would find that for a code which was gazetted and brought to everybody, some suppliers still say they don't know anything about it. So it's an ongoing journey. But now we have decided to firm up in terms of engaging with those suppliers that are dragging their feet, or maybe sometimes taking long to respond. So we are going to use the stick approach now. And we are starting with the help of our MRT recoveries, who are our partners that we brought on board. We are starting to firm up the process, which includes, because in terms of the court ruling that came up in 2021, it cleared that uncertainty. Now it is clear that the CGSO has been properly set up. The minister did the right thing. He followed process in setting up and promulgating the code. And also we are empowered to also levy those fees to suppliers and collect and be able to do what we are doing. So we're not going to spend time trying to, validate why we exit. It has been done. If anyone is in doubt, there's a ruling, court ruling, refer to it. Now we're just going to be a little bit firmer. We've started in, with a smiling and, carrot approach. But I think for those that are still taking long, we started off by implementing a late joiner penalty, which we started 2 years ago. Initially, from inception, we didn't. Although the code allows us to charge a joining fee, we did not charge that. But 10 years later, we saw that there are businesses that have been compliant since inception. It's not fair for somebody to show up 10 years later and just move on as if nothing has happened. So we have now started that late joiner penalty, and we will continue to do that. And one of the things that we're going to do now is to also take people, in terms of the outcome of the High Court, we are actually able to take businesses to court if they refuse to pay, which we're avoiding to do. We were trying to, be nice and, educative and all that. But there comes a point wherein we have to put a stop on that, not only owing it it's not even a monetary issue. It's about the other businesses who have been compliant ever since. What are we saying to them? Are we saying it's okay for people to drag and not come on board and ignore the law? We are not going to do that. So we are going to a little bit firm up. I think those businesses that are not on board can expect that from us. Thank you.
And I think whilst there is a price to pay, right, for the Ombud to exist and to do its work, there's also unimaginable gain for the industry as a whole, for the economy of South Africa. So this has been really an enlightening conversation. I think I can actually say thank you. We're nearly out of time, and I think it's been really great insights across the board. Are you good that I close off our conversation and we get to network closely with some of our stakeholders? I'm seeing that I'm being asked to take two more questions. Okay, let's take them. We do have a little bit of time. I'll come to you in the front just now. Let me take the one at the back. Go for it, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Clarice Mike. I'm from Eduvos, from the Midrand campus. And mine is not a question, but a comment. I just want to say from the higher education sector, I'm very much excited about the education program that you're speaking of. I have noticed that we do have students, and they do have the capability or the potential to reach the marginalized areas that you've been talking about, because even when they do get higher education through bursaries, they are still coming from a background. So I just want to say that we are very much committed to coming on board with that, so that we can also be part of this to educate the communities from which our students are coming from. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've got a question right in the front for me, please. If you come to the front. Thank you. I've got two. Yes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I think from my side, I'm also from Eduvos, from the academia side. So I just wanted to understand, like, from a comprehensive point of view, like strategically, we have obviously institutions that do have law clinics in their institutions, and then we also have institutions that do not have law clinics. So I just wanted to understand, how would you then work out your strategies with those institutions that do not necessarily have law clinics that are established in their institutions? Thank you.
Okay, I think let's take the last question so that we can close it off on a panel or a comment.
Thank you very much to the panel. It's been very insightful. Mine isn't a question, it's more of a suggestion. So perhaps you could use the enterprises who have been compliant to reward them and showcase the gains that have been made over 10 years. So when you reach your 10-year mark, consider some sort of event that highlights what the 10-year journey has been and what that evolution has been. And in so doing, when you showcase those who have been on this journey with you, you perhaps encourage those who haven't been on the journey to come on the journey. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
And I think key to that is the value of it, because they know the value of customer loyalty. So I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you so much. But let's talk to the law clinic question and broadening it to other institutions that don't have. I don't know if you would like to lean into that. Lee?
I saw one more hand.
Are they in the middle?
One more.
It's the easy one.
Oh, there, and you've got the mic. Go for it. There you go.
Good afternoon. I'm Pemelo Machau from the University of Pretoria. Congratulations on launching this report, the CGSO. I had a question written here. I wanted to find out. I know that, of course, you mentioned that this is still a work in progress, but I just wanted to find out what you would envisage the role of the newly established ESG committee would be. Of course, now we are entering into an era where sustainability, or at least sustainable consumption, is becoming serious business. Although, of course, the CPA only makes mention of sustainability on Section 3, the objectives, but without really going much into the provisions and the rights. What is the CGSO intending to do to ensure sustainable consumption and to also promote sustainability in line with the ESG goals as well, I mean the SDG goals, and what ESG as a concept really stands for? So, and of course, as this is a work in progress, as the University of Pretoria, we are open for business to assist you with research in going forward. Thank you.
Always take an opportunity and maximize it. So the university students are definitely, taking their bite out of it. I don't know who wants to lead.
Let me make closing comments at the same time. We're running out of time. And just say about the sustainability question. Our challenge clearly, and we've been doing this for 10 years, this is technically the end of our 11th year. We've done 10 years of reporting now. And we did have a fairly big 10-year celebration already. But we'll continue doing announcements. But for sustainability, like with the challenge that needs to be, we've been through a process of learning. Now we need to go through a process of unlearning and relearning. In part, that's going to involve us coming to terms with what does the Paris Agreement say to us around our responsibilities, our role in the sustainability goals. We have a brand new Presidential Climate Commission that has a huge budget and a huge ambition in respect of sustainability. There are areas in which we're going to have to begin to find where we fit in, where we step up, and where we fit into that. That's an outstanding question. The fact of what the planet is going to be wanting us to all take responsibility for in terms of sustainability issues is a question that has to be answered with intentionality by all players and all parties. And CGSO will not be exempted from that, sir. So we are looking forward to that very new committee placing some very interesting demands. As I'm looking at you, I'm passing straight over the shoulder of the chair of that new committee, and she's nodding and taking notes, I'm sure, because there are some new duties she's going to have to pick up on. That's our wonderful joy and experience going forward. How do we do that? How do we integrate into the trade agreements that the Department of Trade, Industry and Commerce, under whose aegis before anyway, will be doing? We've included an opportunity to look at social clauses, labor clauses, and now we've got to start introducing sustainability clauses. The EU is already wanting to impose sustainability penalties on our carbon-produced products. We need to know what that means for the consumer. We need to know that when we bring products in, what do we have demands about in our trade agreements that's going to impact on our consumer. We're entering a whole new world. And as far as I'm concerned, bring it on. Because that's what we should be doing, is taking responsibility for what the opportunities and the challenges are going forward. Relearn.
Lee, thank you so much. Lee, closing comments from you.
Yeah, like the chair mentioned, we're excited for what's to come. And I mean, the concept of ESG, you can literally pack everything into an ESG discussion, but as an Ombud, as an institution that has sees what's happening on the ground, how do we influence the parties around us to have the bigger discussion as how do we include the consumer and how do we protect everybody as part of the supply chain. So I'm excited for what's to come, and we will do our best.
Thank you so much. And the CEO, closing remarks. Don't forget to include how else are we reaching additional universities?
Yes. So maybe starting with that question, it's a conversation. I think at UVOS, we are already in engagement with them. And with the other universities also, it was a conversation wherein we use what is available in order to reach out. Part of that is also us delivering the guest lectures and telling students about who we are, opening new possibilities. So we are open for any suggestions that you can bring on board. We will work together to make this work using what you have, and we don't want to leave anyone behind. And thank you very much for the input that was given for us to reward those enterprises that are doing well. We have started last year during our 10th year anniversary. We have acknowledged our founder participants who signed up when it was not yet law. It was voluntary at the time. We did acknowledge them and rewarded them. And going forward, we will also look at those that are ways in which we'll work on a strategy on how do we pick up on the organizations that are committed, those that are the turnaround time, maybe whatever else that we'll come up with, we will find ways in making sure that that happens. And thank you very much for the input, Dr. Pemile. We will make sure that we implement that. And to everybody else, thank you so much. Thank you, Zanele.
Thank you so much.
Online.
I think there's been an incredible team that's put this together. There's an incredible team at the office ensuring that you shine and the work that you were doing is really impactful. We want to give them a round of applause and say thank you so much for enabling this to happen. This has been done in partnership as well to an amazing team at Business Day. You can continue to catch the conversation on YouTube as well as their channel. There's a Business Day Dialogues, is what it's called. And to the Consumer Goods and Services Ombuds, we're wishing you and the work that you're doing all the best. Thank you so much for coming. Take care.